You're listening to Plus or Minus with Nathan, Frank, and Greg Moore.
Gregory Moore has his espresso ready, and he's ready to go.
Frank, I met these guys, Phil and Sebastian. They're coffee makers, a little bit pretentious, I'm sure, but man, do they make a nice cup of espresso.
How do you describe their cup, if you could describe it in 2 words?
Small and round.
So, are you going to be able to sleep tonight?
Well, I got a hockey game tonight at 11:15.
So you're not going to be able to sleep and you got to work at 8 a.m.
Let me tell you.
No, I know where you work. You probably go to stroll into work at 10.
I can scroll in whenever I want, as long as I get my work done.
Because you're an exec.
I'm an executive.
It means you look good in a suit and tie.
I look good in a suit and tie any day of the week. Let me tell you this, though. Before we get too far into this podcast, I want to give a big shout-out to our new Crown executive producer, Matty O'Connell.
MC in the house?
He's not in my house. Is he in yours?
Okay. I thought it didn't make any sense after I said it, but I had to commit.
That's okay. Matty O'Connell has come on board, and he is the brand manager of the Plus Minus podcast, and he's going to take us to the next level. So, Matty, we know you're listening because you tune in every week. Thank you for all the help, and here's looking at you.
Now we're going to look professional.
Well, yeah, we won't sound professional. That's not going to change, but we're going to look like the real deal.
I tweeted him earlier today, and you were saying that he was doing some drywalling or something.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some shots.
Making himself feel like a man.
Yeah, Frank, the listeners all want to know. Give me an update on the Plenty of Fish.
I actually signed up the other day again, and I saw a cute girl, and I messaged her, and I told her that I think she's my type. But I don't think I'm going to hear anything back.
Why is that? Because
I've actually had a pretty busy week when it comes to just putting my ego on the table and just being open with girls. Well, I told there's this girl I was talking to since July, and I told her, I was like, if I lived in Calgary, I'd ask you out.
And what'd she say?
She didn't reply.
She was speechless. That's why.
She just responded to something else that I said other than that. And
you know what? I bet you answered all the prayers in her journal when you said that.
I think that she's not interested.
Speaking of your ego, Frank, I'm going to play a clip here of you doing your day job.
That's Small Town Boy. That's by Bronski Beat. That's one of the best band names ever. But something that's not very good is the English language sometimes, and I have a complaint about the word salmon. It should be pronounced salmon. Why is the L silent? I don't know. But I want to know, so if you have the answer to that, which you won't because you didn't invent the English language, you can call me tomorrow. At the office, I'll be in all day, 463-1414.
This is
Frank, first off, I want to know, where do you come up with this stuff? The English language?
I think that might have been Sheldon that mentions salmon to me, and I ran with it because I have a platform.
Well, you didn't run very far, is my concern.
What do you mean?
First off, what is that voice?
That's humor. That's humor. I go in the air, and I just say things that I think are funny or deep or thoughtful, and I'm waiting to get in trouble. I'll probably be told that I should probably talk about something more interesting on the air.
You should probably talk normal. You've got a radio voice.
I thought we were... Oh, you don't like the way I'm talking? You're not criticizing my topics.
Why? That's next. My first concern is, what is that voice you're pulling? Hello, my name's Nathan Frank. You get like a weird 80s grunge accent.
I'm trying to be relaxed, I think.
You're creepy.
It's an evening show. It's got a different vibe than a morning or afternoon show.
It's the weirdest show I've ever heard of.
I think it's pretty. I think the listeners that are tuning in and aren't gonna expect that type of show, and I'll get a certain niche.
Here's what I'm thinking about your listeners. I'm thinking they're all wearing sweatpants and living at their parents' house.
And apparently they like pop music because that's the type of music we play.
You're ridiculous.
Like Miley Cyrus stuff, and a little bit of Sheryl Crow and Alanis Morissette.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with Miley Cyrus or Sheryl Crow or Avril Lavigne. That's all good stuff. I'm going to tune in next week, and I'm going to listen and see if you change your voice again. Because that's a weird mustache voice you got going on.
We got another clip that we can play later on in the show.
Yeah, if you're still listening to the end of this, we'll introduce you. What's your next clip? It was salmon and orangutans. Yeah, stick around for that one.
I talk about orangutans.
So, Frank,
that's the only hint I'm going to give.
This is a hockey podcast. We have tons of stuff to get through this week. I've been waiting, chomping at the bit to tackle these topics. What's first? What first comes to mind when I say last week in hockey?
Oh, well, I would think Vanek would come up.
Thomas.
The Austrian with the soft hands and the Midas touch.
Yeah, and the thick glasses. He has no idea what's going on.
What are you talking about? He wears contact lenses or what?
No, I'm talking about get a clue, Vanek. Like this guy wants what is it, $8 million a year?
I think more of the case is the fact that he doesn't want to play for the Islanders, and you can't really blame him.
Which
They've been one of the worst organizations for the last 20 years.
right, and we can understand that. My problem with this though is your value has decreased substantially.
I don't think it has.
You're playing on a line with John Tavares, Johnny T. Vares, and you can't put up proper points?
Oh, he's doing pretty good.
He's doing pretty good, Frank. You're not paying this guy $8 million to do pretty good. Like, what's his excuse?
First off, the Islanders want to re-sign him because players with his talent level are pretty rare. And secondly, yeah, he is producing. And you can't finding players that are as good as Thomas Vanek. You're not going to find them very often.
I love that we're paying this guy for what he could do. Hey, Thomas, I know that you could. So could Alex Kovalev.
Dude,
but you're not going to.
You are out to lunch. The guy's basically a point a game player. There aren't very many of them in the NHL.
Dude,
he's a 30
goal.
You
always say. You always
he's
say
a 30 he's a 30 goal scorer in the NHL this year. He's got 15 goals in 41 games for the Islanders, 38 points.
Yeah, so is Brad Marchand. I'm not paying him $8 million a year. Guy. All I'm saying is he's soft, and it bugs me so much that he's going to get paid.
Here's the thing. Phil Kessel gets $8 million. Thomas Vanek, same player, one-dimensional, can come in. But the thing about Phil Kessel comparing him to Thomas Vanek is Thomas Vanek actually uses more of the ice. Phil Kessel is a north-south player. He comes in, takes a shot, gets his points. It's a 30 to 40 goal scorer, as anyone in the NHL would want, because goals are hard to come by. So yeah, Vanek's the real deal. He's not going to get $8 million. He wants
Phil
7.5.
Kessel plays with Tyler Bozak. Have you heard of him? Because I haven't.
Well, unfortunately, he's a Regina boy that many Reginians are proud of.
He's from my hometown. And everyone here is proud of him, as they should be. My point is, Tyler Bozak versus John Tavares. Who's got the better chance to score goals?
But Vanek did it for years with the Islanders. I think the players like that sometimes with the Sabres. He did that for years. He didn't have a good center. That's the weakness of the Sabres. They don't have good centermen.
So you're blaming Vanek's poor production or decent production and not great production on having a great center.
I think you're losing this argument. He is doing well with a good center. How can you knock him for that? Sure, he's not on pace for 100 points. But there are very few 100-point players in the NHL.
Do you think that because of the growing
salary cap...
Tavares
isn't a 100-point player.
Do you think that the growing salary cap is going to just ruin these contracts over the next little while it grows?
I think so. And the thing is, like, the good teams will have about $10 million more to spend. And these teams like the Islanders and Calgary and all these other teams, they'll be able to throw money around too.
Yeah, they're all getting at least $10 million from the Canadian deal.
And Florida and all these teams, like the cap floor is going to go up, so these teams are going to have to spend money. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see where they spend their money.
Which leads me
on fringe players. Like it's totally different than last year. Like where Mason Raymond and all the fringe prospects, or sorry, not prospects, free agents were getting. All they were getting was tryouts because the money was that tight.
Yep. Well, how about Ryan Callahan? He's in the news this week.
Yeah, apparently he wants $6.75 million is what he wants.
Between 6.5 and 7 is what I'm hearing.
I think he's a player you give him $5 million, and you give him a long-term deal, and he's the type of player you want for a playoff run because he is the gritty player that will score the dirty goals, score the game winners in a game 7 of this in overtime. He's the type of guy you want on your team.
He's kind of got like the reputation. I mean, we watched him 24/7. He was awesome to cheer for. Great family guy. Great leader. Reminds you of someone who might belong in L.A.
But L.A. doesn't need more of those guys.
No,
L.A. actually needs Vanek.
You know what I'm talking about, though. And I heard actually L.A. is interested in Vanek. But are you going to get – this guy is going to get paid $6.5 to $7 million. Some team is going to give him that per year.
Pittsburgh should take a rental on Callahan. They've been rumored to want Vanek, but I'd say they should go for Callahan. They don't need another sniper.
What is it about Pittsburgh? that somehow they can be in on every big player that's available.
Well, last year the way they did it was they traded with Calgary, and the fired Jay Feaster, right? So they fooled with an orangutan, and they got a good deal.
I see what you're trying to do there. I'm not going there yet. You're trying to
Well,
segue.
yeah, I was gonna call him a monkey, like kind of a fool, but then I was like, well, we got an orangutan, right? You can use that.
Okay, where does Vanek end up?
I think Vanek is gonna end up in Anaheim.
Really?
Yeah, because I think Anaheim has more to offer than LA. And the thing is, the rumor has that he wants to go to the West Coast because that's where his wife's from. So I got a proposed deal for Vanek from Anaheim. Now, what they have to do is they have to deal one of their goaltenders. Frederik Andersen's done pretty good for Anaheim this year. He started the year third in the depth chart, right?
He's been great.
Or they could deal a 31-year-old goalie in Victor Fash or Hiller, right? So what are they going to do? And they also have the other prospect in their system. What's the name of the goaltender I'm thinking about? Anaheim in there, Gibson. They also have Gibson.
Okay, so they're doing well.
So they got all this goaltender depth, and the Islanders they could use a goaltender. Like they have some youngsters in their system. They have Anders Nilsson's a 6'5" goalie who's he could be really good.
Yeah,
but
okay.
They should add to that pool, and then they add a first-round pick, and Anaheim they land Thomas Vanek.
Yeah, who are they giving? So they're giving up a goalie and a
giving
first-round
up-
pick for Thomas Vanek.
Yep. And I think that's pretty darn good for a player that's
he's UFA next year, though.
Well, or they could give them the rights to sign him before they make the trade, and then they get more.
Yeah, that's the only way, Frank. Anaheim doesn't actually need him at this point. They're dominating the entire league. They're fine in the toughest division in hockey. They're going to win the West. They're going to go against Chicago.
Well, what happens in the playoffs?
They're going to go against Chicago. Look at that division right now. It's a mess. They're dominating that division. And they're slowed down. The Sharks have slowed down. LA has fallen off. It might fall out of the playoffs the way they're playing. They can't score goals. They're fine. There's no way they're giving a first-round pick for him.
No, they probably wouldn't want to give up a first, but I mean, you get a good player back for the playoff run, put themselves over the top against a team like LA. Why not? So where do you think he's going to end up? You're thinking Pittsburgh?
I mean, I'm going to say just north of there. I think LA throws a big old wallet at him. Says, "Hey, come out to the West Coast, live the high life. We got lots of room. We can't score goals. We're at your mercy, Vanek."
So what the rumor is it's a first-round pick and a prospect is what they want. The Islanders
for Vanek.
Yeah,
it makes more sense in LA. To me, it does. LA needs help right now.
The problem with LA is they don't have as much cap space as Anaheim.
I know, but it's going to grow. Next year, we're talking substantial. We don't know the number yet, but we're talking a lot of growth next year.
But they still got to fit them underneath the cap at the deadline, right? So they have to throw some salary back, do they not?
Well, yeah, maybe.
I was thinking LA trades Martin Jones, their backup, and a first for Robin Regeer.
They love Jones. Jones is their future after Quick. They just got rid of Scrivens.
Quick's 26, 27 years old.
Yeah, but you want the double combination. That's winning a lot of teams a lot of wins this year, having a good backup goalie. Look at the Habs.
My point is that they're going to have to deal something to get Vanek. Perhaps they trade to Foley, and they probably want to.
Well, here's what I'm thinking off the top of my head. If LA is willing to give them a prospect and a first-round pick, which is a pretty high asking price, they talk to the Islanders to say, keep some of his salary back so we can actually make this trade happen. We can do that.
Well, I'm not. That doesn't usually happen. I don't even know if it's legal.
Yeah, it is. It worked with. They just did with Dubnyk in Nashville.
Dooby.
Dooby.
So you're thinking LA.
I'm thinking LA.
I would love to see Pittsburgh come in and steal him, but I don't think he's the player they need.
It's always fun. Yeah, Pittsburgh needs someone to make room for Sidney Crosby because he.
As I said, Callahan would be nice, but again, these teams don't like to trade within their conference and especially within their division.
Yeah, it's weird. So, I mean, you guys can tweet us at Sir Greg Moore, at Nathan Franks. You're online. And let us know if you want to talk about Girardi, Vanek, Molson, Callahan, Brodeur, Calamari, Camilleri. All these guys are up talking about on the trade block. Sam Gagne, anyone. Let us know what you think. We'll tell you what the answer is because, well, that's our job, right?
So next on the docket is we got the Leafs. Do you want to talk about the Leafs, or what do you want to talk about?
Well, I feel like my family talks about the Leafs all day long, every day.
So you're a little tired, or are you saying that we're speaking to the choir? This is what the people want. Is that what you're saying?
That's what, yeah. half of the people that watch the NHL are Leafs fans. Unfortunately, so it seems. That's the biggest comment we get about our podcast. Talk about the Leafs more. I'm like, you guys hear about the Leafs all the time.
Poor Saps, just loving the Leafs.
Yeah.
So are the Leafs for real or not? Like, they've been such a streaky team this year, and they started out the season well. They're getting outshot, but they're winning. And Bernier was bailing them out, and then they went on a big
Bernier and Reimer.
A month or two was slumping, and now they're on a 9-game winning streak.
Yeah, they're on tear right now. I think they're for real. Remember the beginning of the season, how good they were? They were great at the beginning of the season. Outside of being outshot, the difference was they had some key injuries, and especially to Dave Bolland, who you'll know from the Chicago.
He's still out.
He's still out, but he's almost back. And just the thought of him coming back is making that team play better.
Well, he's a grinder. He's a great third line center.
I'm surprised you didn't say I'm ridiculous for saying that. That was a ridiculous statement.
Well, it was ridiculous, and I think I just bypassed it and pretended you didn't say it. But he's a good third line center. But I want to say the reason why this team is doing well is because Nazem Kadri's been lighting it up.
Isn't he wild?
This guy is the future for this team. Without Nazem Kadri, they're not even a playoff team. And he was struggling for most of the year, but he's been unreal on fire the last 5.
He's on a tear.
He's got 9 points in the last 5 games.
He is what everyone was hoping he was going to be right now.
He's got the elite talent to be a first line center. Tyler Bozak does that.
Poor Tyler, but he's got the chemistry with Kessel. But here's my thing about Nazem Kadri. I heard all week long about trade rumors of Kadri for Sam Gagner, and I'm like, who is
People were talking about that for months.
Who's paying these sports writers to write that kind of crap? Who in their right mind is going to give up Nazem Kadri with all that potential, even when he's slumping, for Sam Gagner, who scores 1 8-point career in his entire life?
They're drinking a strange brand of Kool-Aid in Toronto.
It is
some strange, like they just discuss and such weird rumors. But I don't know. They seem to somehow know what they're talking about sometimes. But when you spread that many rumors, then sometimes you're going to be right.
I literally feel like they had a slow day, and they're like, wow, what should we do? What about Kadri for Gagner? That sounds fun. All right, let's spread it.
I don't understand why Toronto would deal Kadri.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
I do think he's like their most talented forward other than Kessel.
But
he's a centerman, and he makes things happen. So, I mean, those are more important players than Kessel even.
I hope Nonis loses his job if he leaves.
Well, Nonis is the kind of GM who just kind of sits on his laurels. Like he makes some big trades. I should give him some credit for that. He's the one that made the Luongo trade, which was a steal. But anyway, he's a little bit of an overrated GM. He usually tries to clean up the mess that Burke makes, and that's an excuse you can make for him, I suppose.
Here's the real question, though: what the heck is a laurel?
That's a great question. I may have to throw that in my show.
When's the last time you actually sat on your laurels? I don't even think I own a laurel.
I think a laurel is. I think that's a. I think it's a cowboy reference, is my guess. Sitting on your laurels, I think it's something to do with like sitting out at the pasture or something and watching the cows. That's my guess.
We'll have to get our stats guy on that.
Shooting the breeze.
We'll have to get our stats guy or a dictionary or the English language.
We'll have to get our dictionary guy.
Yeah, exactly. You know who I think sits on their laurels a lot? If I could guess, what kind of animal?
Probably an orangutan.
Dragonette. Let it go. I can't let it go. I've been thinking about orangutans for the last few months and how tough they are. I had a friend who told me that an orangutan would easily rip off your arms in a tussle. So I Googled it. I found out that orangutans are quite tough. Apparently, they are 5 times as strong as men. So I picture an orangutan going up against Andre the Giant and just manhandling that giant.
I want to know, where do you come up with this stuff?
Driving. That's where I come up with most of my thoughts while I'm on the road, and then I have to whip up my phone and almost hit the ditch because I'm trying to text in or write in my thoughts in my cell phone.
Well, serves you right.
And I'm thinking this show is for the pot smokers. Most of my thoughts are really abstract and sometimes deep or just ridiculously humorous.
This show, your show, is for the people wearing aluminum helmets.
What's that supposed to mean?
The crazies. The people that are looking for ET to come make them supper.
Well, I mean, what else am I supposed to talk about? If you had a show, what would you talk about?
I would talk about orangutans fighting wrestlers. Yep, that's probably where I would start.
You know what else got to talk about? Strange things always happen in halftime Super Bowl shows and award shows, right? With Miley Cyrus, and I watched the Super Bowl, and I watched Bruno Mars, who I don't think much of him. I mean, sure he's kind of talented, but he's actually quite annoying.
I heard he was great.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job. Most people liked him, but my cousin compared him to the Oompa Loompas,
Wow.
and I thought that was fairly accurate. So I talked about that in my show.
Because he's small?
I think so, yeah, because he's little.
Speaking of small, did I tell you about the celebrity dinner that I went to featuring 3 of the same line mates, Mike Bossy, Brian Trottier, and Clark Gillies, that I went to just the other night?
What were these people like? Were they kind of guys you want to have a drink with after a long day at work, or like what were they like?
I'll tell you as soon as you take off your radio voice.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Trottier was calling himself a little guy all night, which it always makes me laugh in self-depreciating humor. But these guys are from another era, and I know that's actually literal and true, but it was so interesting having them sit down and just talk to us about hockey back then, what they accomplished, and the game today. It was hilarious.
Were you able to talk to them one on one?
No, what you, what you could do is you could bid to get them to sit at your table for 3 hours, but my pocketbook is not that deep.
Celebrity, eh? Like we just want to get a piece of celebrity that we would pay.
$3,500 to sit at their table.
Goodness sakes.
Would you do it?
Uh, no, I couldn't justify that. But that's what I'm telling myself. Maybe if I had the money, it would be a different thing, right?
Mike Bossy said that he scored on average 57 point whatever it was, 6 goals per season of his career.
No, you got this wrong. I looked up the stats after you mentioned this to me, Greg.
He said it, not me.
I think it was point. No, but I think you got the number confused. I think it was a point 7, and that's the best all time.
0.77.
Goals per game.
Oh, no, I'm
Over
talking
his
about
career.
like goals. I'm talking about goals. He said 57 point something average per season.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, maybe.
And so someone asked him which goalie gave him the most trouble, and he said, this is a quote, I scored 57 point whatever it was goals per game. My answer is none of them. And I
He's
thought,
arguably the best goal scorer of all time.
wow, he seemed like it. He seemed like he knew what he was talking about. But then you got Brian Trottier sitting there telling us stories about, this guy's won 7 Stanley Cups. Like, he's almost running out of fingers. He's pulling a Phil Jackson over there.
7 Stanley Cups. I know he had 4 with the Islanders, and I think he might have had 2 with the Penguins.
And he won 1 as a coach with Colorado.
Oh, he's counting that. Okay.
Well, it's still a ring, right?
Okay, so that would be a 7. Okay.
Anyway, it was incredible listening to these 3 guys talk about their team and chemistry and just tell funny stories about what hockey was like back then. But do you want to know what I found most interesting, Frank?
Yes, I do.
Was these guys telling me a story about it was their second. It was I think it was the year of their first Stanley Cup. Okay, and they had to go into Boston, and everyone was talking about how Boston's going to beat these guys up or whatever. And they said the first game happened and nothing happens, and I think they won 1-0 that game. They stole a game. But the next game, everyone was expecting a blowout or a lot of fights to go on because this is back when that's common. Anyway, Clark Gillies is reclined in his chair, relaxed, making everyone laugh, telling the story. And this story was told and referenced by each player on there, by Trottier, Bossy, and Gillies. And they all said that in that game, there was a couple fight, and then all of a sudden, a line brawl broke out.
Ooh, I like it. I like where this one's going.
A line brawl broke out, and Gillies is in the dressing room when this is happening. And I guess one of their best players was in the dressing room too, because those 2 had fought.
And Gillis is the kind of guy you want out there because he's tough.
Oh yeah, he's a monster even still. And Gillies says the goal scorer started to run back on the ice because he wanted to be a part of this line brawl because he was so mad he couldn't be a part of it. And Gillies, he said no word of a lie. He tackles this guy in the hallway on his way back to the ice. He says, "No, you can't go out there. They'll kick you out. We need you for the next game." Anyway,
who was this guy he tackled? You can't remember?
I can't remember. No, okay. Gillies tackled. I don't know who it was. Anyway, what they say at the very end of this story is that at the end of that game, everyone in that room looked around each other, and they were closer as a team. And they all said that game where they all fought and they all went to war for each other was a turning point in their careers, in their NHL lives.
Wow, it's like a Spartan-like story. I like that.
They literally said that game was what propelled them to be a team for the next four years of the Stanley Cup.
This is prior to their Stanley Cup championships.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, I mean, we've talked about fighting before, but what I find so interesting about it is how we as the media look at fighting constantly, and I do it all the time and say it's useless, it's purposeless. But the guys who are in the game say, I think it was like the last poll that was taken for the NHLPA said 98% of the players still support fighting.
Well, it shows loyalty, right? To sacrifice your body, sacrifice your skull for your teammate. It's like a brotherhood type thing.
It was amazing. It was an amazing story. It was a revelation.
It's proving how important each other are to one another, that you can trust each other, right?
Yeah, that's like you on the ice when you go and beat up little kids that aren't actually trying to fight your friends.
Yeah, man, Thumper Cup. I was about to go in there. I was ready.
You're always ready.
I was ready to do battle.
Drop of a hat. So, Frank, one of our topics we have right now is Canucks future.
Yes, and we finally got to the point where we can have this conversation because the Canucks have fallen from their division laurels down to falling out of the playoffs here in the next couple weeks, perhaps. So, do you want me to give you my opinion, or do you want to start with what you think?
It's weird to see, having them been dominant for so long and have much the same core as they've had for their dominance for so long. Here's what I think about the Canucks' future. I think it's going to be an ugly one. And I only think about that from an economic standpoint. With that team still in place, there's still the memories of old and the hope of old. And I hate to say it, Frank, but I feel like they're going to pull a Calgary Flames and just do a slow descent.
And the only reason that they'll do that, I think, is because the fact that they have like 7 or 8 players with no trade clauses in Vancouver. So it's not an easy team to rebuild right now. I think that Gillies realizes that he needs to do something and that this team is not going to contend. He knows that. And the thing is, he's in a Canadian market. I mean, Calgary was in a Canadian market, but this motivates them to do something, Canadian. Right? There's more. Well, there's more pressure on Vancouver than there was, or for example, San Jose. But the thing about San Jose is they've actually brought in younger players to make this team continue to be competitive. Because San Jose, like 3 years ago, probably, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they're in the same spot that Vancouver was. They just couldn't get over the hump.
That's a great point, Frank.
But San Jose somehow they retooled. They got Logan Couture in their lineup, and they got a few other youngsters.
And Hurdle.
And they're still competitive. But no one expects San Jose to beat LA, Anaheim, or Chicago.
I'll tell you this. I expect San Jose to beat LA.
You expect San Jose to beat LA?
Yeah, I don't think they match up. I think they're a better team.
Well, I guess we'll see in the playoffs. I don't think they match up well against LA.
Put money on it.
I think LA is still that team that's. I mean, obviously LA can be beaten, but they won the Stanley Cup. They went to the Western Final, lost to Chicago. They aren't a team that you really need to doubt. They're not a regular season team.
I doubt this team.
Why is that?
They can't score goals. We talked about it earlier. This team can't score goals. This has been the same team forever because they've been defensive and they rely on quick. But now it's costing them. Now everyone else is better than they are. The entire Western Conference is better than they were last year, and they're better than the year they were before, with the exception of Calgary and who are they? The Edmonton Oilers.
Well, sure. There's some competitive teams, but who matches up? Like St. Louis is a team that matches up against
Chicago will beat them again.
Against LA.
Anaheim will beat them again.
Anaheim hasn't won a playoff round in a couple of years, and until they prove it in the playoffs, I don't believe in them.
We'll see it this year.
They got a pretty young bottom 6. I don't believe in Anaheim.
Yeah, so do the Seahawks.
So do the Seahawks. Okay, crossing sports to prove a point.
I'm transcending the NHL. Here's my point about Anaheim and about LA and about San Jose. With the new playoff format, Frank, only one of these teams is going to make it to the conference final. There's no chance of both of them being in there. I've got Anaheim, San Jose, LA, and we'll say Phoenix. Who knows?
And you're going with San Jose to defeat LA and Anaheim. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm going Anaheim is going to win the division.
Okay, but
they play this team. They play this team the entire year.
You could be right. I mean, they're obviously dominating this regular season, but I'm looking at the playoffs are going to be good. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And LA, you're right. LA can't win every year, so I'm turning a 360 here, and but I would go with LA.
So I win. So that's what 2 wins for you, 1 win for me. We're doing okay tonight. You're ahead though.
But St. Louis is going to take down all those teams.
St. Louis is wild. Remember, I was talking with this about someone today, how in the past St. Louis has been so they reminded me of the Kings, a gritty, defensive-minded team, and then this year they just score goals on command.
And they're a team though. They're a team too that has a horse on defense that you can rely on. Like
Jay Bouwmeester.
LA has that in Doughty. Yeah, Jay Bouwmeester, great one, Greg. But who does Anaheim have as a horse in the back end?
They don't. They're doing it by committee.
That rarely works.
Always the doubter, Frank. Eh?
For example, Vancouver having their defense by committee, that really worked for them, didn't it?
That was not their problem. Vancouver's problem was they couldn't score goals. Now you got to move past that loss.
And the problem was their goaltender and his issues between the years.
Game 7, Frank. I tell you this all the time. He brought you to Game 7, and you scored one goal?
The guy has never he's never outplayed the other goalie in a playoff round.
Scored one goal against the best goalie in the league, arguably.
Next week, we're going to have a pretty good discussion about who starts in goal for Team Canada.
Yeah, you will. So tune into next week. But right now, I want to go on. You want to talk about Hedman's emergence. Victor Hedman, defenseman for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tell me about him.
Well, the guy is having a breakout year. He's got 37 points in like 45 games. I'm gonna get his actual stats. I don't have them memorized. So they're right here. Victor Hedman he's the difference for Tampa Bay this year. This team wasn't a playoff team the last 2 years, but they got their horse on defense. As I was just saying, you have to have as a team 36 points in 48 games. He's better than PK Subban, and he's a +8.
Victor Hedman is better than PK Subban. That is a big old statement there, Frank. You're going to upset a lot of those Les Habitants fans by saying that.
This guy is the whole package. 6'6", 229 pounds. He's got his offense going. He's got the potential to be the shutdown D-man that there are very few of those in the NHL.
When was he drafted? Was that the year with...
He was drafted right after Taves. Or not Taves, sorry, Tavares.
That's the year.
Second overall.
Second overall, and he's been... Last year was horrible. So
well,
you're telling me that...
These defensemen, it takes some time to develop.
That's what everyone says. It bugs me. It bugs me that that's the case, but...
And you got to remember,
starting to point to that being true.
The guy's in Tampa Bay, and like most of us rarely see him. I mean, he can totally fly under the radar. It'll be interesting to see how he does in the Olympics, because at the grandest stage, facing against Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin,
he didn't get picked.
We'll see how much responsibility he gets. He didn't get picked.
He didn't get picked for Team Sweden.
Get out.
I'm serious.
I'm checking this right now.
I told you.
I am totally. You are my leader, Greg. I look up to you now for all information when it comes to Sochi. Victor Hedman is not on the team.
Where you been for the past 28 years?
Well, I didn't trust your hockey knowledge or your wisdom in any life situations.
But how about my charisma? Hey, that's got to count for something.
You got charisma. I'm thinking that I'm going to actually send my cover letter to you, and maybe I'll have some ideas of how I can improve my career path.
Victor Hedman did not make Team Sweden, and you're calling him the answer in Tampa Bay. I know that they're fighting for the top of the East, and no one's going to catch a picture because of that weak division. But number 2, you're saying Tampa Bay is there because of Victor Hedman.
Dude, just because Sweden made the mistake and I put him on the team doesn't mean everything. They're going to have Alex Edler on the team, who's probably going to blow it. And he'll probably blow it in the round robin.
I tell you what, Rick, you got to let go of these barbs for the Canucks, man.
He really has gone completely downhill.
You're a Canucks fan, and you never cheer for them.
I haven't seen Victor Hedman play much in the last year. I've just looked at the stats, saw that he's doing pretty darn good, and I got a little excited.
Speaking of Tampa Bay, Steven Stamkos rumored to return this Saturday.
That'll be good. He's going to be a horse on that top line. I've used the word horse about 3 or 4 times. I need to think of a new verb.
That was like me. Last night I watched Seabiscuit with my wife. I
think horse is a good word for defenseman, but I can't really use that for a winger on the top line. But he's going to be good with Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch.
I'm hoping for some injuries here. I want a little bit of intrigue on this Team Canada roster. I want to see who they have.
You are so sadistic.
As their next forwards coming in.
You want people to get hurt so that you can have some intrigue in your life.
Oh yeah,
read a book, Frank.
I'm thinking about reading a few books, but I'm usually kind of sleepy.
So who do you want to be?
I want Giroux. I want Giroux on that team. I love Giroux.
You just want to see them overpick St. Louis again.
I just want to see him skating through the neutral zone with a little bit of flow flowing back in his hair, and then him making a dandy little deke around Alex Edler against Sweden in the semifinals, and scoring the game-winning goal. That's what I want to see.
I'll tell you this: I would hate to read your journal, man. Just the negative Nancy things in the Canucks in there, it would just weird me right out.
Guess what? I'm gonna have apparently I'm gonna have a blog, and I'm gonna blog about the Canucks, and it's gonna be really negative.
Yeah, it's gonna be depressing. Where are you having a blog on, Frank?
Puck Rant.
Puckrant.com, hey?
Apparently, and that's apparently where we're going to put our podcast too.
Yeah, might get some features on there. But while we're still talking about hockey, because I mean, half this podcast is dedicated just gibberish anyway, orangutans and salmon.
Salmon?
You wanted to know, are the Senators a playoff team?
Do you think they're a playoff team? You're not giving enough opinions tonight, Greg. I think you're being my yin to my yang, and you're just trying to bite my chaps.
I'm being your Darren Millard tonight.
You're being my Darren Millard. Well, what do you think about Ottawa?
You want me to be more
I know what I think about Ottawa.
I don't think Ottawa stands a chance.
Baloney. I think they're a playoff team.
Are you kidding me?
You see what this team did last year? They had their squad was ravaged by injuries, and it didn't matter. They made the playoffs. You know why? Because Paul McLean's a great coach, and he's going to coach this team into being a playoff team. I'm not saying they're going to win a round or two, but they're gonna sneak in for sure.
They're better. No room for them. No room. Frank, the East right now is as packed as or worse than the West was last year.
So who do you have in before them? You have Toronto in before them, probably.
Yeah, I do. I have Montreal.
Montreal, they are just a bunch of Smurfs.
Listen, I don't want these French undertones coming back here again. Toronto,
it's got nothing to do with the French. It's just that they're just a bunch of rascals.
I got Columbus making it. Detroit could make it if they figure it out. Philadelphia can make it. All of those teams will make it before Ottawa.
We will see what happens, Greg. We'll talk in April. We'll be on this podcast, and we'll figure it out.
From 13th, check this out. From 13th to 5th in the Eastern Conference, 13th has 59 points. 5th has 64. We're talking 5 points. It's too hot for Ottawa.
So right now we have Detroit, Columbus, the Rangers, and Montreal, and Toronto. All 4 of those teams aren't for sure things. Ottawa's, 3 points behind Detroit? And Detroit's been terrible the last few months. They haven't won in regulation at all in the last 20 games.
Detroit is and forever always will be Detroit with Mike Babcock back there.
Well, they were Detroit with Nick Lidstrom back there, and they're not the same team since.
Don't get me started on Nick Lidstrom. You know how I feel about that guy.
Both Ken Holland and Mike Babcock started making excuses last year about how this team may not make the playoffs. Now they're in the Eastern Conference, which is traditionally a worse conference, and they may not make the playoffs this year.
Yep, and I think they will.
But how close is that, though? I think you might have just been saying this, but 13th is New Jersey, and they're 2 games over 500, which normally wouldn't be a playoff team. But as you said, they're 3 points out of a playoff spot. They're 3 points from Detroit. It's just a cesspool. We'll see what happens.
It makes it fun. And the funny thing is, most of those teams are in the Metro Division. Like the Penguins are just running away with that division title, and the rest of them are fighting to make the playoffs.
New York is the second team in that division.
Now, does New York make the playoffs if they have to sell Callahan and maybe Girardi?
Not likely. I mean, what return would they get?
If they're close, do they keep them?
Well, they're 7-3 in their last few games, in their last 10 games, and they benefited from the outdoor games.
Yeah, a couple of them. Well, it's funny, Brodeur. I heard he lost so bad against the Rangers. Was it 7-3? And someone called Brodeur the best goalie in indoors, the best indoor goalie.
Yeah, I like that. Just hammer on him. But I mean, teams like New Jersey are going to drop out, but I think a few more teams are going to drop out. But even after that, I mean, it's going to be a battle, probably from 11 up in the Eastern Conference.
Speaking of teams dropping out, I'm going to switch conferences on you. The Winnipeg Jets.
I want you to say that they're for real, and then I can laugh at you.
This is the hardest thing for me to watch, Frank, because I'm a diehard Atlanta Thrashers fan. You know that it's hard for me to watch the Jets' mediocrity every year. And it was just on this podcast I said, this is the stupidest move because it's just making an excuse for them to be failures again. And then they start winning. And I think you said they're 8-2.
In their last 10, yep.
Under Paul Maurice, who, by the way, I think is a great interview. I love Paul Maurice.
Great interview.
I've always enjoyed him.
He's a good columnist for TSN.
Let me say this. Let me pick yet. They are going to do what they do every year and finish 9th.
Exactly.
And hurt this franchise again.
They're the reincarnation of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Calgary Flames. Just mediocre, but not in the playoffs.
It's the never-ending story. It drives me absolutely bonkers.
It's a disgusting thing to witness. Like they need to just tank and get a top center like a Sidney. You can't get Sidney Crosby every year, but get a top number one line center like Jonathan Tavares or whoever you can get. Nugent Hopkins. Just get some superstars.
I will tell you this though. I love how hard they work. Under Paul Maurice, there is a visible work ethic that I admire. And if there's one thing that the Calgary Flames have taught you this year, especially you Edmonton Oilers fans, is that with mediocre talent, you can still win games by outworking your opponents.
Well, this team can score goals, right? But the problem is they haven't been able to keep it out of their own net. And that's just undisciplined play, right? Defensively.
And they have a lot of money put into that defense too.
They're still scoring goals though.
Yeah, they're figuring it out. They won again tonight against Carolina, 2-1. Al Montoya, the backup when Pavelec is not playing, is winning games on his own.
You think they should go with Montoya before Pavelec?
The questions are out there. The questions are starting to come up more and more. People are asking Paul Maurice, hey, does this influence who you're starting? And he says no.
Well, Montoya hasn't had a lot of opportunities in his career. Like he's 28 years old and hasn't had a lot of games played.
I think if Pavelec falters at all, then they're going to go with the hot hand because I mean, they're trying to make the playoffs. We all know it's not going to happen, but I will go back to the beginning of the year when we called who could make the playoffs. We both said that the Winnipeg Jets had a chance because the top two in the division, St. Louis and Chicago, were locks, and after that we all had question marks. Now,
weak division.
To our surprise, the Colorado Avalanche decided to grow up real quick and fill that third spot.
Yeah.
But in the past 2-3 weeks, the Winnipeg Jets have shown that they're going to finish 9th. It's driving me nuts.
It's a pretty interesting division. Like you got a whole bunch of weak teams, as you were saying, Chicago, St. Louis, and then Colorado and Minnesota are grabbing those last two playoff spots. But Minnesota's a pretty average team, and Colorado's been very human after the first 20 games. Like they haven't been near as good.
Yeah, well, I mean,
although they are 8-2 in their last 10.
That's
yeah,
right.
they are 8-2 in their last 10. So, but they've been a little streaky since.
They're going to go. They're going to go. And I think actually you, at the very beginning of the year, once they went on their hot streak, you said that they're the real deal. So props to you, Frank, for getting that right.
I just felt like I had to say it, right? I felt like I was boxed into a corner by you and my brother Jaden, who was co-hosting that podcast.
I just felt like it was gas, but I mean, it worked out in your favor.
I guess Colorado gets enough out of, Patrick Waugh gets enough out of that team to be competitive.
Yeah,
they got talent.
Oh, they got great talent. I think what is it? McKinnon's going to score at least 25 goals this year.
It's just whether or not, how long it takes to develop, right? And
they're not going to complain with all the extra revenue from.
It's not like McKinnon's getting a lot of ice time. He's third in that team in scoring. He plays 16 and a half minutes a game.
He's a beauty, and you gotta love Patrick Waugh for walking into that team and saying, "No, we're not taking Seth Jones. We're taking Nathan McKinnon."
Yeah, even though it would have made more sense to take Seth Jones.
Yeah, it takes some cojones to say that. Now, I want to talk about one more thing before we sign off. Did you happen to see Ben Scrivens break the NHL record for most saves?
59 saves or 60 saves?
59.
59 saves. Why not just throw him on Team Canada with how bad our goaltenders are, hey?
No, I don't think so.
Well,
he got a cool nickname, though, hey? The Professor?
Because people think he's intelligent.
Well, I guess he went to some Ivy League school.
I guess when you compare him to hockey players, and he probably is intelligent.
Now, what do you think about them bringing him in there? First off, comment about the...
Well, they gave up like a second or third round pick.
Do you think he's a number one goaltender?
No, I think he's... I mean, the way I look at it is if he couldn't outplay James Reimer in Toronto, then he's not a starter goaltender.
That's
because James Reimer's a good backup, and that's how I look at Scrivens is that he's a good backup.
James Reimer's also a great friend too. I'll point that out.
Oh, sure, he's a good person. Right on.
So
Good for
who do the Oilers do to fill that?
Good
fill that
people
gap?
don't get very far in the NHL. That's just the way it is.
Isn't that the worst?
That's what it's like in life. Good people don't always get ahead.
Wow, Frank. I thought this is going to be back to your journal. This is why you're so upset about everything all the time. Good people don't do good things. Don't happen to good people.
No, but actually, to rebuke myself, I had a journalist that came in to speak to us at school last year. His name is Wab Canoe. He's a First Nation journalist, and his advice to us was, he said, "You may be the most talented journalist in the world. You may have more talent than anybody, but if you don't treat people right, then you won't get anywhere."
Here, here.
There is a nice story.
So who does Scrivens back up next year in Edmonton? You know it's not going to be Breezgalov, even though I saw he painted his helmet.
Well, he has to be re-signed, Greg. Right?
Scrivens?
He's a free agent.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
He is a free agent, and he can sign wherever he pleases.
No, I think he'll sign there. He's from Edmonton, and
yeah, he's from the area, but that's not always appealing. Even like, for example, Joffrey Lupul's from Edmonton, and he didn't exactly do very well in Edmonton.
No,
but he's a different kind of person. It looks like. It appears.
Well, and the coach, right? He played for him for the Marlies. I'm sure that he had something to do with bringing him in too.
I think my opinion is that they should bring him back. I mean, the sample size isn't going to be that big. It's not like they're going to pay him $5 million a year.
Well, I hope not.
They'll probably have to pay him $3.5 million a year is my guess. And bring him in and try to sign another free agent, find someone else, and let them battle.
Ryan Miller's my guess. I bet you they go hard for him.
Oh, Ryan Miller's not going to want to sign in Edmonton.
No one wants to sign Edmonton, but someone's going to get paid for playing in Edmonton.
Well, I just don't think that he's going to say, "Oh, well, I have this opportunity to play wherever I want, then I'm going to go to Edmonton," which is an unknown.
So who signs there?
What he may think is, this team is going to come around, and I'm going to be here for it.
Who signs there if Ryan Miller doesn't sign there?
Well, I mean, we have probably an Edmonton goaltender. Jonas Hiller's unrestricted in the summer.
You don't think that Anaheim's going to try and sign him again?
Well, they're not. I don't think they're going to sign Fash, him, and keep the two youngsters.
No.
I mean, that's an asset. They should trade them, but apparently they say they're not going to.
No, he's won games for them this year. When I saw Anaheim play Boston, Jonas Hiller single-handedly kept them in that game in the first period and allowed them to win. He's not going anywhere.
The thing with Hiller is he's 32 years old. Same with Fash. Like, they need to go to the future at some point here, and they have those youngsters.
So we'll get rid of Fash.
Well, sure, get rid of Fash, and Edmonton will probably go after him.
You watch it. They'll give away Fash for Vanek, and then we're all going to be like biting our tongues here. If I'm Edmonton, though, not Edmonton. If I'm Anaheim, I don't want to mess up a good thing right now.
If you're Anaheim,
I don't mix that team up at all.
So you think that they have the horses to? Again, I go with the horses to go all the way with the roster they have.
I guess we'll find out, and that means, Frank, we are out of time because you used horses for the 9th time in one podcast.
I think that was not. I think I might have been a baker's dozen.
We're cutting it off. So if you want to talk to us, it's at Sir Greg Moore on Twitter, at Nathan Franksher on Twitter. We got a Plus Minus Facebook page, Google Plus page, YouTube page. Why, you ask? Because we have to have them all.
We're coming at you, from every single direction.
Thanks again to executive producer Matty O'Connell. Stick with us, guys. We'll be back next week, I promise. Less horses, more bakers, and more dozens.